Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Case Variety Show. We're coming at you early in April. Beautiful Aotearoa conditions, grassy wicket, but we're digging in, playing the leave well, defending the stumps. Got a hostile Australian A seam attack coming at you, but we're here opening the innings for the Aotearoa 11. We are the Niche Case. From theniche-case.com, home of major Aotearoa sporting yarn and kōrero. Big up to the Patreon whānau for supporting the Niche Case and all our content. We just recorded the Patreon podcast where we did chat a bit of Warriors. We did chat a bit of rugby league, setting up today's variety show, which is an Aotearoa Warriors takeover from my perspective. One side of the variety show is all things Warriors. That's what we're here to do today. Well, just me. We'll see what Nico Hines can deliver on the other side of the variety show. But we did dive into Warriors Rugby League, some general footy as well, and some Kiwi cricket. We talked to Blackcaps as well on the Patreon podcast. That's what we do most weeks. So big up all the Patreon whānau for supporting us directly. And we have some bonus content there for you as well. Coming at you on a Tuesday, which means Monday evening we sent out our email newsletter full of Aotearoa sporting nuggets, bits and bobs. Again, it was a Monday. After the Sunday, Warriors had a good win, so I had to drop some more Warriors thoughts in the email newsletter. That's what usually happens on a Monday when the Warriors are winning. And I was also curious to see you did some paragraphs on the local footy scene there as well, Nico, the wild card. What's the vibe across domestic footy this season as a bit of a warm-up corridor? Like, are there any trends? Are there any themes? Are there any things standing out to you in the domestic football landscape early on this season?
Quite a few trends. I mean, there's always a bunch of stuff, and it's such a weird, like, trying to gauge an entire country's worth of footballing activities is far too much for any one person. So I'll try to like chuck in little I don't know, notes and just observations throughout the season. I think once my own football kicks in, it might be a little bit more difficult to keep up with some of that stuff, but we'll see how that goes. Um, I don't know. I just because I the National League is one that I cover very extensively, and so there's stuff like the regional stuff leading into the National League. I can't help but focus on the National League ramifications first of all, and what's that top four race going to look like in Auckland and in Northern rather. So that's the Auckland and the Waikato regions. Central League and Southern League probably a little more well defined. I think as you go down, it becomes clearer. I mean, there's a couple teams in Auckland a couple of Auckland teams rather that we can pretty comfortably expect to finish in the top few spots in the Northern League. But I think certainly below that is at least that fourth spot's going to be up for grabs. I mean, I don't know. We got our South Auckland heritage at the Niche Cave, so I probably ought to, if we're going to single one out, I think the start that Mangere have made to the top flight is nuts. Old Rewa of they beat Birkenhead in the first game 4-2, and then they won 5-1 against the fellow promoted team West Coast Rangers in week 2. I look at their squad and it's stacked. Like they've got good National League players there. They've clearly I was going to say have spent a lot of money, but of course it's an amateur league, so I'm not allowed to say that. I think they've recruited very well. Monty the Python Patterson is there scoring goals for them. He's the only player with more than 2 goals in the Northern League so far. He's got a double in both games. They've proven National League players. I don't know if this is like no one quite knows what to expect from them. Maybe maybe the first couple of games have been slightly convenient. I don't know, but maybe like what I'm saying, maybe this will be a flash in the pan, or maybe they're legitimate contenders for a National League spot at the end of the year. It's very curious to see how that goes, because that has been a very clear standout early days as Manurewa just scoring goals for fun.
That most of that was in the Monday newsletter. You can sign up via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. Big up the Patreon funnel, which is patreon.com/our nichecase. And of course, we are from the niche-case.com. This is where we enter the mindfulness portal. And I'm going to hijack it because I was listening to a song this morning. There was a song by Navy Blue, who I mentioned in the musical jam segment last week. He's got a new album out as well. But his previous project was called Navy's Reprise. It's got a song called Ritual. And there's a line there that says, the real question is what to do with all the sorrow, which I found fascinating from like a perspective of everyone's trying to move through sorrow to get to a happiness, to get to a bliss, to get to gratitude and celebration. But what do you do with the sorrow? Because if you carry that sorrow with you through the happiness and the celebration, it's going to come back and it's going to appear and it's going to kind of drag you down. It's going to compound. It's going to gain momentum and it's just going to form a whole lot of yuck and glug that's going to drag you down. So what do you do with the sorrow? Do you like just bid it ka kite? Do you nurture it? Do you burn it? Do you like write it on a piece of paper and light it on fire? Like, I don't know. But the real question is what to do with all the sorrow. How does that make you feel, Nico, the wild card?
I mean, I have ideas about how you can like, I think, honor the sorrow, change your perspective towards the sorrow in a way. But I think it's probably also a thing that everyone kind of needs to, because we all experience it one way or another. It might just be one of them things that everyone needs to figure out for themselves as well, and pick up little lessons along the way in their lives. And I actually come to think of it, that's probably every mindfulness we've ever done. It applies to you got to figure it out yourself one way or another because no one can actually do it for you. But yeah, what do you do with all the sorrow? It's what do you do with all the sorrow? What do you just leave it hanging? You know.
Still figuring it out, but hopefully you can ponder that today and you can figure out what to do with your own sorrow and your own yuck and your own clug that you're dragging along with you on this journey. Let's get into some Aotearoa sporting matters here. I'm feeling fired up, and I've got a fired up banger of a leading take to serve up. So I'm going to come out hard, leading all the Warriors stuff. Fascinating game against the Sharks. Warriors defeated the Sharks 32-30. Gritty, grinding affair over there in Shark Park. And the battle in this game was epitomized by two wingers. Ronaldo, Mulitalo, and Edward Kosi. Two wingers going at it. They were chirping. They were battling. They were scoring tries. They were having a jolly old time. And obviously the Aussie commentators, they weren't going to mention it. But your boy over here was thinking, this is a battle of South Auckland. Ronaldo Mulitalo, he's from Otara. He's a Ellerslie Eagles junior, but he's from Otara. Edward Kosi, he's a Mangere East junior. So I'm going to assume he's from the Mangere East, maybe Otahuhu, maybe like Western Papatoe, Mangere area. Those two dudes were the two dudes chirping on the field. It was Otara versus Mangere East. It was two young Kiwi Samoans battling on an NRL field, and I just had so much fun watching those two go at it because of the South Auckland factor. Mangere East versus Otara, Otara versus Mangere East. They were scoring tries, they were trading shots, they were trading chirp and banter. Had a little bit of Adam Pompey in there as well. He's from south of Auckland, the county's Manukau region. You had Sean Johnson there. He's from north of Auckland with the Hibiscus Coast vibes. They were on that right edge. Even had a bit of Marata Niokore. He's from Mangere East as well. But the battle between Mulitalo and Edward Kosi on that edge in the game was a fantastic celebration of South Auckland Rugby League. Big up to them. Had a lot of fun watching that battle and tracking that battle. What is your leading banger of a take?
Well, I've got just an idea that's been simmering about Abby Erceg's impact at her new club in the NWSL, which would be absolutely perfect if she was from like I don't know, Otahu or something like that. Like if we could add, because we've already had Manurewa, we've already had Mangere now, we've had would you say Otara as well? We've got this real South Auckland theme, but I'm gonna have to bust it up because Abby Erceg is actually from the Naughty North. She's from Whangarei. Um
Big up Dylan
and
Brown.
Big up Dylan Brown for
Big
sure.
up James Fisher Harris. Hannah Wilkinson.
Yep. There's another one. There's
Tim Southey.
Tim Southey would probably be first on the power rankings these days as well if you're doing the Northland sporting aspects. I think Abby Erceg's recent work would probably be slept on a little bit if someone did sort of like I don't know, poll the population for that. She is now retired from the football ferns, so it's not something that we can like build off into the World Cup buzz or anything like that. It's just she's doing her own thing at the tail end of her club career. But there is still a golden lesson to be gathered here, one that I think applies, far beyond just football as well. So Erceg was in a situation where she was pretty comfortable. North Carolina won a bunch of titles with them. She was captaining them, and for a while there, absolute like peak Kiwi sporting performances. But that has sort of North Carolina in more recent years, the last couple of years, have had some off-field dramas. They've had some very strange stuff in terms of like going about a rebuild where they've just broken up a lot of the thing, trading away international players over and over and over. Erceg herself complained about that a couple of times, about how the team seemed to be getting like fleeced on these trades where they're giving up their best players. Eventually, that led to the inevitable, which is Abby Erceg herself being traded as well, traded to join Racing Louisville. So this is a young franchise. They're just entering their third year of existence, haven't been that competitive so far. So why'd they sign Abby Erceg? Because they wanted a veteran leader. They wanted a great defender. They wanted someone who could raise and drive the standards at the club. Someone who could take them to the next level, the kind of player that makes others better, leading by example. And how has that worked out so far through the first 2 weeks of the season? Yeah, pretty well actually. Grinding 0 draw against Houston Dash in the first game, which was, Houston were a playoff team last year. They were away from home, ground out a clean sheet where for a while there, they were really having to dig their heels in and hang on. I think both teams did tire in the last sort of 20 minutes. So the fact it was the first game of the season probably came in handy, but good grind there from them to get the draw in week 1 away from home. Next up, home opener against Washington Spirit, and they're 2-0 down at halftime. Not looking great at that point. A little bit too reminiscent of their first couple seasons where there were just too many games that felt like foregone conclusions. Well, what happened next? Erceg herself said that in a sort of post-match conference, said that in the previous years, Racing Louisville teams might have just crumbled from that position. 2-0 down at halftime. Oh, well, it's going to end up 4-0, so it goes. But then something she said as well, directly, like this is the direct quote from Erceg. She said, we said from the very start that we wanted to rewrite the history at this club. I thought that was a great line talking about the impact that she could have and why they traded for her in the very first place. So there was no panic at the break. They came back out, fired up. Erceg herself scores a goal header from a corner 2 minutes into the second half. They end up drawing 2-2. No wins from either of those two games, but very clear progress. Erceg giving them exactly what they dreamed of when they acquired her. And I think a pretty nice lesson for the rest of us across all sports of just how valuable it is to have like elite on-field leadership. Like that kind of thing just makes everyone else better. It makes all the difference, and that's where you get that like progress from year on to year on. I'm sure there's plenty of those you could spot in the Warriors as well. I think Tohu Harris is a pretty clear example of someone who helps do that. But generally, when you're trying to make that step from season to season, your leaders are the ones that drag everyone along. I think we're seeing that from Abby Erceg very, very clearly in the NWSL.
Sounds like Abby Erceg does play for the Warriors with
yeah, well,
she's sprouting off there. Statistical. Let's get statistical. Got a couple Warriors stats for you today. Warriors are second in completion rate. They are completing 82% of their sets. Sorry. The stat is that the Warriors are completing 82% of their sets, and they are second best in the NRL. The Warriors also have Shaun Johnson, and a lot of people are going to be celebrating Shaun Johnson. That's fine. Shaun Johnson is doing something real sneaky. Not just the running, not just the passing. Shaun Johnson is kicking to a high degree. This is his second season averaging over 400 kicking meters per game. And he's averaging 548. So his previous best was 423.7. Right now he's averaging 548 kicking meters per game, which when you combine that with the second best completion rate in the NRL and having one player in the top 50 for missed tackles when other teams have 4, 5, 6 players in the top 50 for missed tackles, you got a recipe for Warriors footy. Complete your sets, kick it long, smash them in defense. Storm home late in the game. What's your stat here today?
Stat is just something I whipped up beforehand to salve my own curiosity in light of Kane Williamson picking up what seems to be a relatively serious knee injury, which is awful areas with the World Cup coming up at the end of the year. And also in light of Williamson having been extremely influential in some big test results. I was just in recent times, I was curious to see what it actually looks like when in terms of Blackcaps, just win-loss record, nice and simple. When Williamson plays, when Williamson doesn't play. Since his debut in each of the 3 formats, test matches go exactly how you would expect. He's played 94 test matches, and they've won 40 of those. 23 draws, 31 losses. That's a win-loss ratio of 1.29. He's only missed 11 test matches since his debut, which is pretty decent. Of those, though, they've only won 4 of those 11. 1 draw, 6 defeats, win-loss ratio of 0.67. So they basically win twice as often on average when he plays as when they don't. Makes sense. I think we've seen from the test team very recently that how influential he is when they win. Makes sense that when he's not there, they would struggle. And nothing about that should be surprising. However, they actually have considerably better records in ODIs and T20s when he hasn't played, which is surprising. Do have some theories, but just as to the numbers, he's played 161 ODIs, 81 wins, 71 losses, couple ties in there as well. I think we remember those games. That's 1.14 win-loss ratio when he doesn't play, and he's missed 54 games since his debut. So he's played 161, he's missed 54. 32 wins and 17 losses, 1.88 win-loss record. That's in ODIs. In T20s, he's played 87, he's missed 56. So we're actually not that far off. He's only played about 60% of the games in the T20 form since he debuted. When he plays, 44 wins, 2 draws, 2 ties rather, and 40 losses, 1.1 win-loss ratio. The 56 games where he hasn't played in T20s, 31 wins, 5 ties, and 17 defeats. That's a 1.82 win-loss ratio. Surprisingly quite drastic in that they've been a lot better with their just pure results when he hasn't played in the white ball formats. I do think a lot of that can probably be put down to the kind of games that he is rested for. Like he's going to play away to India, he's going to play away to Australia, where defeats are likely to happen. He's not necessarily going to play a home game against Sri Lanka, for example, as is going on right now. You know, those are the kind of games. It's not just now because he was going to the IPL. He's often he's made a bit of a habit of skipping out these kind of things sometimes. So I think a lot of those games where they're winning without him are against maybe games they were going to win either way. But it does remind me of a great stat about Tom Latham, which is that as the ODI captain, he has a 21-4 win-loss record. He at one point had 16 wins in a row. There were 3 losses to India I think at the start of this year, wasn't it? They had those 3 games in India, which no one even really remembers. But they lost all 3 of them. Latham was captain for those, so it was a better record than it was. I think at that point it must have been 19-1. It's now 21-4. The flip side, though, which also adds into that Williamson stuff about the kind of games that he doesn't play, is that those games were all, other than the India games, were all against Ireland, West Indies, Bangladesh, Netherlands, and now you've added 2 against Sri Lanka more recently. So surprising maybe in terms of the raw numbers, but also there's probably a story behind that in terms of when Williamson doesn't play as well, which maybe makes that look a bit more drastic than it actually is.
Let's get deep into the mangroves. The Warriors did have a fantastic win over the Sharks, and this was quite interesting because, like every other game they have won, they came from behind. And they had a away trip to Townsville, conceded early tries, came from behind, defeated the Cowboys. Against the Bulldogs at Mount Smart, they were down at halftime. They were down at the 60-minute mark. Storm home to get the victory over the Bulldogs. Against the Sharks had a flurry in the first half, and the Warriors ground their way back into the contest, although we've all seen these Warriors comebacks before. I don't know where this idea of like the Warriors don't have these comeback victories comes from, because the thing about the Warriors is they lure you in with these type of comeback victories. So like we've seen this before from the Warriors. We have not seen the ability to play the set for set grind, and that is why the Warriors are winning these games in the last 20 minutes. The Bulldogs couldn't go set for set with the Warriors. The Sharks couldn't go set for set with the Warriors. The Sharks were very effective and efficient in a bit of razzle-dazzle and attack. As soon as the rain started, as soon as the game got on, 60 minutes, 70 minutes, the Warriors are storming home thanks to their completion rate, thanks to Sean Johnson's kicking game, and thanks to a lot of other good stuff from the Warriors. Krokstad was fantastic running the ball, taking 2 hit-ups a set for a lot of the time there. And he's always running into forwards, right? Like Krokstad isn't out running into outside backs. He's got a bit of footwork. It's not a massive unit, but he's got a bit of power, and he's running into middle forwards twice a set, which is pretty impressive. Saves a lot of the attacking oomph for the Warriors forward pack, that they can load up in defense and they can load up later in the set, get Adam Whanu-Blake taking a hit up, and so on and so forth. The Warriors defeated the Sharks without Tohu Harris, or Mitchell Barnett, or Tamaire Martin. The forward pack stuff is really interesting, though, because Harris has been so influential in the Warriors' attack with his passing and his defensive prowess as a tackler. The Warriors still had Dylan Walker in that passing role. Jazz Tavanga elevated himself as a big minute lock forward, doing a bit of passing, but taking a lot of tough carries. Bit of mongrel in the middle for the Warriors forward pack as well. So we've seen the Warriors play different styles of footy, because when Tohu Harris is playing there, they've got the passing in the forward pack. Tohu Harris and Dylan Walker is a lot of passing. Take out one of them, and you've got a more kind of stock standard league-wide level of passing. But also no Mitchell Barnett. He's a physical presence. He leads the physicality for the Warriors, and they didn't have him, but they were equally as physical as they have been all season, often smashing the Sharks as they came out of their own line after a Sean Johnson kick. There was a shift as well. You had Ronald Volkman was pretty good playing as a half. He did have a kick that led to a Wade Egan try. Wade Egan has scored 4 tries in 4 games. He scored 4 tries in 20 games last season. He played 80 minutes against the Sharks. Wade Egan is an underground superstar. Shout out to him. And his try came from a Ronald Volkman kick. Ronald Volkman was subbed out late in the game because Dylan Walker went to half, and he was set up on the left edge, which then gave the Warriors a middle forward trio of like Whanu-Blake, Jazz Tavanga. I think Bailey Sirinen spent some time in the middle as well. So there we've got another adjustment. We had the adjustment from Tohu Harris as a dominant ball player. He's not playing. So you've got Dylan Walker coming on after 20 minutes as a ball playing middle forward, adding that presence to the Warriors attack. but you also had more of Sean Johnson at first receiver and stuff like that happening. A little bit of Nickel Krukstad or Volkman as well. The Warriors had to change their style of footy without Harris. Then, mid-game, they changed it again by putting Dylan Walker in the halves and having a different combination of forwards. So you've got a lot of versatility in there because Bailey Sirenen can play edge, he can play middle. He kind of sucked previously. I've really liked Bailey Sirenen this season, physical, skillful. And then you've got Jackson Ford, one of the best Dragons players ever. He's an 80-minute edge forward. Manata Niokore was subbed out at some point and Josh Curran came on, but Josh Curran can play left or right edge. So you've got Josh Curran as a different type of edge forward, and he's got a bit of X factor, he's got a bit of energy, so he can cover either edge. And you've got Bunty Afo as a runner. You've got Tom Ale as a runner. Tom Ale hasn't missed a tackle all season. He did get bent back, though, a few times by the Shark defense, which was very strange for Tom Ale because he's missed the 10 meters per run. But I can accept that if he's never missing a tackle. Like that's a pretty good trade-off. And I've also liking the work from Adam Pompey and Viliami Vailea because they are difficult to handle as centers. They got a bit of footwork, they got a bit of size. Pompey just seems to make space, wiggling and wobbling through the defense, but they're also good passers. And again, this is a key element of Warriors footy. Tohu Harris is highly influential because of his passing. Dylan Walker is a funky factor because of his passing. But then you get out on the edges and you've got Pompey, you've got Vailea, and I keep saying this. Rocco Berry's the same. Ali Leotawa is the same in New South Wales Cup. They all have really solid rugby union backgrounds, so they can pass really well. So you've got a bit of distribution at centre as well as all the passing in the middle. And that was on display for a few tries the Warriors scored. Nickel Krukstad, Pompey, Kosi, try. You want centres who are good ball runners, but they also need to catch and pass. They also need to be able to execute an overlap. That's what they've got, and I think the Warriors have a lot of funk throughout their whole team. I feel like I've described every angle of Warriors footy over the last 4 hours this morning because I wrote about it. We talked about it on the Patreon podcast. Here with the Variety Show Warriors Takeover. What do you got deep in your mangroves? Because I'm going insane.
Well, I'll mix it up a little bit with the Wellington Phoenix Wahine then, because the ladies finished their season on the weekend, unable to avoid a second straight wooden spoon, but they did at least get to finish the season on a bit of a high after a 3-1 win away to Adelaide in the midweek, and then a comeback 2-2 draw against Melbourne Victory with a 99th minute equaliser, which almost threatened to knock the two-time defending champs, in fact, out of finals contention, but they did manage to hold on to fourth spot as it finished. Second time this season that the Wellington women have salvaged a point after being 2 goals down. They also did it in a 3-3 draw away to Brisbane earlier in the year with a red card, so even more impressive there. And they almost won that game. I think there was that was the game where there was a late offside goal disallowed right near the end. So ultimately, it was the loss to Newcastle before these 2 most recent ones that probably cost them that the chance of dodging that wooden spoon. Even if they just held on for a draw in that game, as it happened, as it played out, and the rest of it, they would have been able to finish it ahead of them. But one of them football truisms is that the table doesn't lie, and it reflects the entirety of the season. And while the Phoenix did have a very competitive second half of the season, you could almost split into 2/3. I think there was a competitive middle point, and then there was the sort of last point where they're actually still competitive, but starting to get some points, starting to get some wins and draws a little bit more consistently than they had in the past. But it was those 5 losses in a row to start things off that just dug them into a bit of a hole that in the end was a little bit too much to overcome. And I mean, they had a change in manager during preseason. They didn't have any preseason fixtures against other A-League teams. There were a lot of injuries, a Ferns camp a week before the start. So a lot of disruptive things that led to why they were such slow starters. But they did still, they took too long to adjust to the season, and the points that they couldn't get back. But 3 of those first 4 games were games in which they lost by 3 goals. That never happened again. After those first 4 games, they never got beaten by that much again. What happened in the 5th game was that Grace Wisniewski returned as well. I think that was a major impact in their season. Coming back from an injury that she picked up in that Ferns camp, she was the one who scored the 99th minute goal that finished their season. And I think, honestly, a bit of a sleeper player of the year contender, given how big her impact was when she was out there. Mackenzie Barry would also be high on that list. Marissa Vandermeer, experts at the back, both of them. Vandermeer also scoring 3 goals. Very big as a aerial threat for the team, which is a little bit surprising, but so it goes. The attack, I think, began to click when Bessie Hassett moved into more of a facilitating 10 role to start linking things up. That happened in that stunning 5-0 win over Canberra. However, poor finishing in a lot of the games after that did mean that many close results went against them, including that Newcastle one. A lot of 1-goal defeats, something that they'll probably have to fix. But the first thing that they'll have to try to figure solutions for coming into next season. Weird fact, the Knicks finishing last in 11th place had the same goal difference as Brisbane did, finishing in 7th. And they were better goal difference than the 3 teams that finished between the Phoenix and Brisbane as well. These are small margins in terms of getting to a more competitive state, and probably worth pointing out at this stage that next season Central Coast Mariners are entering as another expansion team, which has taken the league into a full 22-round home and away season, a longer season for a team that's finished way stronger than they started in both years so far. That seems like a positive for the Wellington Phoenix. It also means that the top 4 finals spots will become a top 6, so it's a little bit closer to getting into some playoff stuff as well. They're not that far away, top of the shopping list for next term. It's got to be a striker, probably an import striker, given the sort of local rarity, even in Australia, where a lot of the other A-League teams have like an American striker straight out of college or a backup NWSL player looking for minutes in their off season. That's something to do. I also wonder if maybe their local recruitment might swing a little bit too, just the strategies there, because you saw Michaela Foster, absolutely brilliant for them with her set pieces and also her defensive work. There's stuff in possession as well, really good, like a really solid player who's worked her way into the Ferns squad. She led the team in minutes, and she was a scholarship player. Millie Clegg was the top scorer. She was playing on an amateur contract. Both of them were standouts in the New Zealand grades. Foster definitely in the National League for the last couple of years. Clegg a little bit more in the sort of age grade stuff. Didn't play as much National League because of her age. But they're also they're the 2 highest recommendations I would have made if someone had asked me preseason. And I highly doubt that if I'm thinking that way, I highly doubt I would have been alone, especially given how well they worked out. Had been a bit of a focus in their first year in particular on signing players with potential who would grow at the level. I think what we've seen though in the last, certainly in this season, is that the players who are good enough on the domestic scene can make that step up. The best National League players can do it. Emma Main was another one. She played 65 minutes as an injury replacement player, 2 appearances in the last 2 games of the season. She had an assist in both of those appearances. 2 assists in 65 minutes. Imagine if she had a full season. It's proof the best players in the National League can make that jump up. Meanwhile, Football Ferns attackers that they recruited, Emma Ralston, Paige Satchel, combined for 2 goal contributions all season, which does make you wonder a little bit about some of the success of that. Other than that, I mean, sort out a coach for next season would be very important. They've only got 2 players contracted for next season, Chloe Knott, Alyssa Wynnum, but I'll write about all of this stuff a little bit more later in the week. Come back around to some of those ideas. Question time. Shall I go first? Do you want me to chuck up? We're going to have to bring back some more Warriors stuff. I'm sorry, but it's the Warriors Takeover episode. So it's felt like Andrew Webster coming in as a coach has made a very immediate impact on this team and putting his imprints on them. And it feels a lot like what Mody Moar has done with the Breakers. So I wanted to ask you, what similarities do you see between the 2 of those head coaches?
Passion, which for those in Aotearoa, it can be mana. Through your passion, you earn some mana and you build up your mana. And I think both of them have a lot of mana, and they have instilled a lot of mana in their respective teams. Both have the defensive focus as well. And there's no issues in attack, but there is an emphasis on defense. And most importantly, both teams, the players responded to that emphasis on defense from the coach. My question to you, really, this wasn't an impressive loss that we saw when the Warriors lost to the Roosters. Wellington Phoenix lost to the Melbourne Victory. It wasn't an impressive loss. It was a bit of a bummer of a loss. Are there any positives to take from it?
Positives from that particular performance, not too many, but I do think like get Clayton Lewis back in the starting lineup will help some of that issues. I guess the fact that Zavada keeps scoring goals is really nice. It would be nice if for the first time he could score a second goal in a game where he scored a first goal. He's got 12 goals this season. He's never scored a double. Like he's scored in 12 separate games each time. Um, but the fact that he's scoring goals is helpful. Other than that, I think it's just one of those games where it's like it's the second time they've lost to Melbourne victory. Maybe there was some sloppy set piece goals they conceded. Not good, but look, they're still fifth. They're 3 points off third. A lot to play for over the rest of the season. Really tough game coming up away to Melbourne City next, but they do have the game at Eden Park after that. And as we know, they've never lost at Eden Park. So a win there keeps their season very much on track. One more win from their last 4 games, I think it is, should put them into should get them into playing finals football. Might have to get a little bit more than that if they want to be playing a home finals game. But yeah, they're still in a position which would be very enviable for pretty much every other Wellington Phoenix team pre-Ufuk-Talay era. So and maybe Clayton Lewis will be the hero. We'll see how that goes.
Zawada scoring goals.
There's a lot to play for. Zawada scoring goals is certainly a positive. If he could keep doing that, it'd be nice.
Musical jam. We got the Call Me If You Get Lost, the estate sale from Tyler, the Creator. It's basically an extension of the Call Me If You Get Lost album. It's got a bunch of new tracks, one of which is produced by Madlib, one of which is produced by Kanye West. You got a bit of A$AP Rocky, you got a bit of Vince Staples, but most importantly, you've got 4 or 5 songs that just sound absolutely perfect. What is your musical jam?
Musical jam. New album by Vera Ellen is out. Very good. Kiwi tunes there. Same as there was a song from Neve Strang as well, another Kiwi songwriter, which was very good. Soft Plastics new album. This is another Kiwi recommendation. And then other than that, a couple sort of instrumental focused guitar-y albums from Steve Gunn and William Tyler. Very good as well. There's plenty to choose from there.
Did have a new track last week as well from Shepherd's Rain. So basically, if you're into like heavy metal, or I don't know what the niche genres of that kind of music are, but if you want a bit of Polynesian flavor, a bit of Samoan heavy metal, you got Shepherd's Rain. If you want a bit of Te Reo Mody heavy metal, you got Alien Weaponry. That is Aotearoa music summarized right there. You got a bit of everything else, but if you are into that style of rock and roll, bit of heavy, you do have some Usos doing it. You got some Te Reo brothers doing it as well. Shout out Shepherd's Rain. Shout out Alien Weaponry, and big up yourself. You're from Aotearoa. You're living it up in Aotearoa. You're having a jolly old time, and you're doing the best you can. So shout out to you. That's all we're trying to do as well. This is the Niche Cage Variety Show from the Niche Cage. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, and cha-cha.